LEGO Castle was introduced in 1978 as one of the original 3 LEGO themes. The other 2 were Town and Space. Now, this theme was built around medieval knights, kings, and castles. It was so popular, in fact, that LEGO went on to create many more sets over the years. So let's explore the evolution of LEGO Castle. The very first set in this theme was the now legendary Yellow Castle set. This was one of the very first sets to include minifigures and came with an impressive 14 of them. Looking at them, you'll notice that the knights have several different coats of arms on their shields and armor, as well as the flags. Well, surprisingly, these were actually all stickers, because minifigures at this time didn't have printed torsos yet. And as you may expect, finding one of these original sticker sheets is near impossible, and even if you can, they sell for close to $500, which is crazy. The Yellow Castle set came with 767 pieces, and by modern standards was a pretty basic build. However, at the time, it was revolutionary, and LEGO was quick to release 2 follow-up sets the next year. The Knights Joust and the Knights Procession set both came out in 1979 to help shore up the support for the soldiers in LEGO Castle. While the second of these was a little more than just a minifigure pack, the Knights Joust set was a great addition to the existing castle. One thing to notice in these early sets are the horses. They're all brick-built since LEGO hadn't introduced any molded animals yet. Despite their simplicity, the LEGO Castle sets were immediately very popular. The introduction of proper minifigures sparked a sense of creativity, allowing kids to create their own medieval adventures. The classic castle theme would be massively expanded in the early 1980s, with the introduction of new minifigure factions such as the Forestmen and the Black Falcons. In fact, as a surprise to many, LEGO even re-released the Yellow Castle in 1981 with a different set number after they realized this theme's massive potential. Despite being identical to the 1979 version, apart from the box number of course, the original Yellow Castle set is far more valuable for being the first to market. Speaking of which, in 1984, LEGO released new, more realistic castle sets, such as the Knights Castle, set number 6073. While this set had fewer pieces than the Yellow Castle, with only 408, the color better represented an actual castle. Further, it included printed pieces. The minifigure torsos, shields, and even several wall panels all had printing for a change. For builders, this was a monumental change. Placing stickers on minifigure torsos had been stressful and resulted in many crooked designs. Beyond that though, these new sets introduced several other new elements, such as one-piece horses, horse saddles, helmets with fixed visors, feather plumes, waving flags, bows, and arrows. The amount of new pieces being introduced during this time in LEGO's history was an incredible sight. The sets also marked the debut of several new factions of knights, each bearing unique symbols on their shields. The 2 biggest factions in the 1980s were the Crusaders and the Black Falcons. The first faction to be featured was the so-called Black Falcons. These minifigures wore black pants, black helmets, and blue torsos with black sleeves, and often had a majestic falcon emblem on their chests and shields. It's worth noting that at the time, the name Black Falcons was not even totally official. LEGO only ever issued one set with this name, and that was the 1986 Black Falcons Fortress. And also, fun fact, this set actually went by a ton of different names. It was released as Draco and the Black Knight in the UK, as well as Eagle Crest Castle in Australia. Turns out in the land down under, they called this faction the Eagle's Crest. Why this set has so many names, I'm not 100% sure. But apart from the name of this set was unique for a few other reasons actually. First, it introduced these corner pieces and is the only set ever to feature these walls in yellow. It's also the only place you can find one of these Black Falcon flags in blue. Although no new Black Falcon specific sets were released after that, these minifigure characters would appear as guests in many other sets, such as set number 6059, Knight's Stronghold, as well as set 6057, Sea Serpent. These sets implied that the Black Falcon tribe was at war with the Black Knights and the Crusaders. Dioramas in the late 1980s also showed the Black Falcon's fortress under siege by the Forestmen. These guys seem to make a lot of enemies. Something quite unique about LEGO Castle is that it was one of only a few themes that LEGO has ever decided to re-release sets from. Of course, the original Yellow Castle, but also in 2002, at the request of fans, LEGO re-released the Black Falcon's Fortress as a LEGO Legends set, which was almost identical to the 1986 version with only a few minor alterations due to what pieces were available at the time. Now, of course, the Black Falcons weren't alone in the LEGO Castle universe. The same year as the Black Falcons, LEGO launched another faction, a lion-themed kingdom that would later be officially named the Crusaders. but more on that later. Their shield featured either a blue lion against a yellow background or a yellow lion against a blue background, both with a red border. Over the years, the Crusaders found their way into several sets, along with the Black Falcons, Forestmen, and Black Knights. Sets such as the 1986 Guarded Inn, as well as the 1989 Knights Challenge, a set that was the successor to the 1979 Black Falcon set. One set definitely worth pointing out though was set number 6041, the Armor Shop, in 1986, which was the only set to ever have the rare black short sword and a Crusaders flag. Similar to the Black Falcons, LEGO didn't officially name this faction for some time, although catalogs in Australia used the name Lion Knights, while Canada used Lion Crest. However, finally, in 1992, the United States and Canadian LEGO catalog officially established this faction as the Crusaders. The first castle under the Crusaders was set number 6080, the King's Castle, in 1984. This was the largest LEGO castle produced in several years, and it included 4 mounted knights and 8 soldiers. Following the trend of earlier castles, the walls of this set castle could be opened to access the interior. The second and final Crusaders castle released was 1990's famous King's Mountain Fortress set. This was one of the very first sets to feature the new knight helmet visor and armor pieces. Other new elements in this set included crossbows and glow-in-the-dark ghosts, as well as 2 exclusive elements, this maiden minifigure and a black bird piece. However, the most memorable feature of this set was that it was the first LEGO castle to be mounted on a raised ramp and pit baseplate, which had debuted the previous year in the iconic LEGO Pirates set, the El Dorado Fortress, and would also feature in several later castle, pirates, and even space sets. Once LEGO introduced the raised baseplate, you bet they used it, a lot, all the way until 2012 when it was quietly decommissioned. In 2001, LEGO responded to fans by re-releasing the popular Guarded Inn set, which was renumbered as LEGO Legend 10,000. The set included 2 Crusaders, a mounted Black Falcon, and an innkeeper. One small change that was made to the reissue was that the horse saddle now had 2 clips instead of 1. Until 1992, LEGO Castle sets had horse saddles with a single clip on one side, but now it's all the 2-clip variety. Now, the Forestmen were another major faction in LEGO Castle, and LEGO delivered us even more amazing sets. The first Forestmen set was released in 1987 in the Camouflaged Outpost set, which was a hideout built into a large tree next to a cave where the Forestmen lived. Much like the larger castles, this set could be opened to reveal the cave and interior of the tree. Over the next few years, other Forestmen sets were released, such as the Forestmen's Hideout in 1988, the Forestmen's River Fortress in 1989, and the Forestmen's Crossing in 1990. This was the last original Forestmen hideout set, and featured a unique baseplate with a small stream printed on it, as well as an old tower and a large tree connected by a rope bridge. It also included the only Forest Woman minifigure, and to cap it all off, it was only ever released in North America. Now, the Forestmen were known for being the foes of the other factions with knights and castles, such as the Crusaders, Black Falcons, and Black Knights. Some of them have compared them to Robin Hood and his outlaws, while the Lion Knights and their lion crest represented King John and the English throne. Now, the Forestmen and the Crusaders were discontinued as factions at the end of 1992, but you see, they'd return. LEGO loves to revitalize its most iconic themes. In 2022, LEGO released the Forest Hideout set as a clear reference to the Forestmen's Hideout from nearly 30 years earlier. Unlike the other castle re-releases though, this one made several significant changes and brought in a lot of new building techniques, resulting in a more modern and sleeker design. You can check if this set is still available online by using YouTube's shopping feature in the description. Now, throughout the 1990s, LEGO would continue to release more and more factions under its castle banner. Easily the largest of these series was the Black Knights. These guys were a powerful and ruthless force, equipped with spears, axes, and swords, and often seen riding black horses. Known for their distinctive black armor and helmets with visors, as well as their shields, which featured a dragon on a yellow background, these knights were kind of the bad guys of the theme and seemed to kind of have beef with just about everybody. The first Black Knight set was the Black Monarch's Castle in 1988, which featured a large castle with multiple towers, a drawbridge, and a prison. With 702 pieces and 12 minifigures, this was one of the largest castles that LEGO had ever made, and it's still a fan favorite decades later. This castle was meant to contrast with the King's Castle, and even the inverted colors show that the two sides aren't exactly supposed to get along. Another notable set was set number 6090, the Royal Knight's Castle. which was an even larger castle released a few years later in 1995 with a tower, a gatehouse, and a drawbridge. The Black Knights also appeared in several smaller sets, such as the Knights Stronghold and the Knights Challenge that I mentioned earlier in this video. Over the next several years, LEGO kept releasing new and exciting castle sub-themes. The smallest of these was 1992's Wolfpack Rebels. Unlike the maybe good, maybe bad Forestmen, these rebels were nothing more than outlaws and even fought up against the Black Knights. In fact, the Black Knights castle set had a Wolfpack rebel chained up in the dungeon. Overall though, this Wolfpack tribe only ever got 3 set releases: the Ghostly Hideout, the 100-piece Wolfpack Renegades, and the Wolfpack Tower set with 256 pieces. Overall, these sets weren't terribly interesting, and we didn't see too much of these guys after this. Was this faction officially defeated? Well, that's maybe one way to look at it. While the Black Knights used dragons and crests as ornaments, a new faction, 1993's Dragon Masters, brought actual dragons and wizards to the table. Led by Magisto the Wizard, who was known as Merlin everywhere outside the United States for some reason, the Dragon Masters aimed to capture and tame fire-breathing green dragons to ride into battle. This is where we got the iconic green dragon with red wings. You've probably seen this classic creature before. Introduced in 1993, these beasts popped up in 3 sets: the Dragon Wagon set, the Dark Dragon's Den set, and the Fire-Breathing Fortress set. This new dragon figure had a movable jaw, arms, wings, and tail, and studs on the back to carry a minifigure rider, while a flame could be attached to the tip of its mouth. These Dragon Masters also introduced new knight helmets, halberds, faces, and the wizard's glow-in-the-dark wand. The Dragon Master's shield emblem was identical to that of the Black Knights, except that they featured a green dragon. Dragon Masters marked a shift for LEGO Castle towards a more fantasy and mythological direction that would still be followed by many future castle themes. While the Dragon Masters were discontinued in 1995, their legacy inspired other castle sets to have magic and fantasy themes, such as the Fright Knights. Fright Knights featured a group of soldiers who weren't ruled by a king. Instead, they answered to Basil, the Bat Lord. The Fright Knights leaned even further into the supernatural fantasy aspect of the castle line and included black dragons with fire-colored wings, creepy trap-filled red and black castles, crystal balls, and Willa the Witch, a dark sorceress who is the real power behind Basil's throne. Yeah, quite the change of pace. The largest set from the Fright Knights line was set number 6097, the Night Lord's Castle. With 601 pieces, this wasn't the largest castle we got, but it was the tallest, standing at nearly 20 inches. Although technically LEGO officially discontinued the classic castle series in 1999, it certainly wasn't dead. You see, LEGO has brought it back twice since retiring it. Castle 2, also known as the Fantasy Era, was a short-lived theme from 2007 through 2009 and had a total of 8 sets. These brought in more fantasy elements such as the Dwarves' Mine, which focused on the battles between the dwarves and trolls, as well as the spooky skeleton ship attack, which had some valiant knights fighting a gang of skeleton pirates. After this, LEGO released Castle 3 in 2013. We also got what would be the largest castle set ever released at this time. It was the King's Castle. Yeah, most of these castles have very similar names, but this one included 996 pieces, 7 minifigures, and was certainly a more modern and sleek build compared to the legacy sets. Since then though, LEGO has released several medieval and fantasy sets with standalones, including the medieval blacksmith and the Creator Lion Knight's Castle, which is a gigantic set with over 4,000 pieces and a $400 price tag that was released in 2022. What I love about LEGO Castle is that the theme refuses to die. Themes like Knight's Kingdom and even Nexo Knights have a lot to owe to this wildly successful theme, and I'd love to hear which castle set is your favorite in the comments below. If you'd like to see how LEGO horses were introduced, click this video I made on the evolution of LEGO animals, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel SpitBrix if you enjoyed.